Do as we say, not as we do. We're special, you're not. We're elites, you're a peon. Let's talk about these government-funded, taxpayer-funded security details that these former government employees have been getting, that Donald Trump is in the process of taking away those security details. How did this happen, and how does this help our Second Amendment rights? Let's break it down when we come back. Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the Four Boxes Diner, proud American gun owner, constitutional attorney, member of the United States Supreme Court Bar, and I'm proud to say the top voice of the Second Amendment under the Gundy Awards for 2025. Thank you for your support. A big honor here at the Four Boxes Diner. And again, we appreciate your voting for us and your support for us. We really do appreciate it. It's a great honor. All right, folks. So I have a particular view on this, but I'm getting some pushback from conservatives. So I want to raise the issues with you on whether or not we, the taxpayers, should be paying tens of millions of dollars for security details for former, hear what I just said? Former ex-employees of the federal government. This has become a big issue recently because it turns out, and even I did not know this, and I know a lot, but it turns out that we have former government employees who are getting millions of dollars a month in free private public security, their own security detail, special transportation arrangements, private limos, and the like, supposedly because they're under threat. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But this has come to light, and now people have realized this is going on, because I did not know this was happening with former employees. I knew that current employees, if you're the head of the CIA, if you're the president, if you're the vice president, I get it. You're protected. But I didn't realize that this was something that you could have for years and years and years after you left the employ of the government. But it turns out that's what's been going on. Because Donald Trump has just removed this taxpayer-funded security details from several prominent former employees of the government. That would include Anthony Fauci, the doctor. That would include Mike Pompeo and his assistant, one of his top aides over at CIA. It also includes John Bolton, I believe the former Secretary of State. These people were getting millions of dollars in security paid for by the taxpayer for years and years and years. And now Donald Trump has said no go and has turned off the spigot, which I generally support. And let me tell you my view, and then I want to tell you the pushback I've been getting, and you can tell me in the comments below if you think I'm right or you think I'm being unduly harsher. So my position has been that every American has the right to keep and bear arms, including former government officials. It's also my view that as a general matter, unless you're dealing with something, a unique circumstance, or the president or the vice president, or a national security position that you're in today, currently, right now, as a general matter, if you want to defend yourself in American life, you should exercise your Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. Or you can hire your own private security out of your own pocketbook. That's fine. But as a general matter, absent extraordinary circumstances, I'm not sure why taxpayers should be funding these security details. And mind you, the reason why I don't like the idea of special snowflakes, elites, special people who are above the rest of us peons in America, get special treatment when it comes to security is because I think it creates bad incentives. It creates incentives for bad public policy that detracts from the individual fundamental right to keep and bear arms. And what do I mean by this? What I mean by this is this. We know historically, when it comes to various discrimination laws, whistleblower laws, healthcare rules, pension rules, and the like, it is not, and insider trading rules, by the way, it is not unusual for there to be a whole bunch of laws and regulations that apply to you and apply to me. But guess what? Those same rules and regulations and restrictions and laws that apply to you and me do not apply in many instances to members of, let's say, Congress. They don't apply to the government. Now, the reason why this is significant is I think this creates a bad incentive because it means if government officials and in this case, prominent former government officials, are living under a different set of rules and have a different set of benefits and arrangements that you and I don't have. They don't have the same incentives that we do. They don't have the same issues, problems, and costs and issues that we have, and therefore they have a skewed perception of reality. And I think this is a great example dealing with these taxpayer-funded private security details, U.S. Marshal details, all this sort of thing that's given to these former government employees, because it puts them in a different position than the rest of us Americans. And what do I mean by that in the context of the Second Amendment? Well, you and I have to rely upon our right to keep and bear arms. We have to acquire firearms. We have to acquire ammo. We have to follow the various laws. And if you're in a blue state, which is just as dangerous, if not far more dangerous than most red states, you have to not carry your gun into a post office. Right? There's things that you can't do. None of this, I'm sure, applied to Anthony Fauci, John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, and the like, because they were special. They had special rules, and as a consequence, they probably did not care whether or not you or whether or not I exercised our Second Amendment rights. Why? Because it didn't matter if the Supreme Court says, for example, hypothetically, that sensitive places are okie dokie. It didn't matter if court said and government says you can't bring a gun onto a post office. It doesn't matter to these people if you can't bring a gun into a Greek diner because it happens to have a liquor license. They don't care because, guess what? They get their own armed security, special and separate from the rest of us. They are exempt from the laws that we peons, from their point of view as I see it, have to follow. And I don't like situations where government employees and or former government employees have a whole host of different incentives to cheer for or cheer against, let's say, the right to keep and bear arms. So you get guys like Senator Chuck Schumer, who I'm sure have private security details in all sorts of ways, paid for by the U.S. Capitol Police or whatnot. And what do they care if there's a right to keep and bear arms in America? They already have people with guns surrounding them. Now, again, I understand the billionaire class can do this, but they pay for it themselves. So if Michael Bloomberg wants to pay $20 million a year for private security, as far as I'm concerned, he can have at it. It's his money. He can spend it any way he wants. If he wants to spend it on private security to protect himself and his family, that's perfectly fine. I don't have a problem at all with that. Of course, what I do have a problem with is when these people provide themselves with their own security, or even worse, government now pays for their security, and then they turn around and tell me that I'm not allowed to have the right to keep and bear arms to protect myself and my family and my friends and my community. That's wrong. Now, I'm going to say that I've had some conservative friends and colleagues and others have pushed back on me, and they said, Mark, no, you're wrong on this, because if you're a former government employee and people like the Iranians or terrorist groups or cartels are trying to kill you, you have special needs and you need special protection, so it makes sense to pay for their security while that threat exists. And I'm like, look, I understand that there may be a period of time after you leave office where in your brain you have access to sort of super duper top secret information. You may not want to be kidnapped and lose control of those people, have them get kidnapped and tortured, and next thing you know, they're revealing state secrets. I understand for some period of time that might make sense. 6 months, maybe a year, but after a year or so, the information you have in your brain when it comes to national security intelligence, I suspect, becomes obsolete and outdated and useless to people really fast. So why are these guys like Mike Pompeo, who obviously was in office during the Trump years, the first Trump years, this is now like 5+ years after the fact, why is he still getting millions of dollars a month in a private security detail? Why is John Bolton, who even knows who John Bolton is? Maybe I do, but, maybe you do, but, what I'm saying? Like, why is he, again, he was in the first Trump administration. Why is he still getting all this 5 years after the fact? How real is this threat? And of course, I would also add that we don't want, maybe the solution here is to get rid of if we think there's Iranians in the country that are trying to kill Americans, we should get rid of them, period, full stop. They should not be in the country in the first place. And by the way, I want to also remind you of one thing before I wrap this video up. Do you remember when Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was running for the White House, had raised a lot of money, had a big-time vice presidential candidate with him, high profile with the Kennedy name, with a long history of assassinations, unfortunately, of his father, and, of course, of his uncle, JFK. And he asked repeatedly of the Biden administration for Secret Service details while he was running for the White House. And the Biden administration repeatedly refused to provide him to give him Secret Service protection, even though he was obviously a legitimate presidential candidate with real support, with real numbers. And yet the Biden administration refused to give him that support. And also remember all those Democrats in Capitol Hill that wanted to take away Secret Service protection from President Donald Trump on the grounds he was an insurrectionist and all that other crappy nonsense. Remember all that? So we also have to keep in mind that all of this tells me, even if you're RFK, even if you're Donald Trump, with the exception of being the president himself, you are really your first responder. You are still your own first responder. And whether you're, and again, I don't like incentives that take that away from people because it makes them think they're special and above the rest of us. And I don't think that's a good thing, because in those situations, they're much more likely to say, what do I care if the court respects the right to keep and bear arms? What do I care if they're imposing gun control laws on people that live in the mountains of North Carolina? Not my problem. I've got my own private security detail paid for by those same taxpayers that I don't care whether or not they have the right to keep and bear arms. So with that said, I'm generally speaking for cutting off security details and stop getting taxpayer-funded money to these people. And also, there's also kind of the practical reality, and this is a separate issue, of these people have made a lot of money. They're famous. They've written books. They're on TV. I'm sure they've got corporate gigs and consulting gigs and all sorts of income streams. So if they really, really, really don't want to carry guns themselves and they want someone else to do it for them, I suspect they're in a position to be able to hire that private security on their own dime. I mean, last I checked, I thought Anthony Fauci at one point, I thought, was like one of the highest paid employees of the entire federal government, in addition to any other income he may receive from other sources. So anyway, tell me if you think I'm being unduly harsh here by Donald Trump taking away millions of dollars in security from these individuals and tell them to rely on the Second Amendment like the rest of us, or if I'm missing some points here, I would appreciate it, because I have a feeling this is going to come up on Fox News, so I want to see what you guys think, if I've got something right or wrong here. So there you have it, folks. Hope you've enjoyed today's show. Make sure you follow me on X at 4Boxes Diner. Don't forget to subscribe both on Rumble and YouTube. We want to have both platforms be respectable. And again, I look forward to talking to all of you again very, very soon here at the 4Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.